Happy New Year. Welcome to West. My name is Andrea Smith. I am the pastor here, and it is a joy and privilege to be able to usher in 2021 with you. I'm so excited for our message series that we are starting today. That is not what I said. It is based off a study done by Kathleen Edelman. She is a psychologist, and she has written this study, this book, and done all kinds of small group series around it, small group podcast or whatever you want to call it. What you heard or what I said is not what you heard. I said this, you heard that. Have you ever had that happen? Like what you're trying to say is not what the other person is hearing, and then you get frustrated with each other? So over the next 6 weeks, we are going to talk about communication and our relationships and how we can work together to have better relationships and get along. Isn't that something we would all love to do more of, is have less conflict in our lives and get along better? I really think you are going to enjoy this message series. The staff and I have enjoyed talking about it and learning what each other's temperaments are. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So I'm just so glad that you're here. If you're newer to the West community, we invite you to text the number that you see on the screen. Text the word welcome to the number 704-343-8955. 704-343-8955. Text the word welcome. We have a gift that we would like to share with you, and then you can choose to receive our communication at your own desire. So I'm so glad that you are here. We also have something exciting starting in another week. We have this Netflix small group study or Netflix study on the story of God that Morgan Freeman helped produce and write, and it is just a powerful study. It talks about everything from what is the devil and evil to the afterlife to world religions, and it's going to be really powerful. Mackenzie Stoney, a young adult that calls West her home, she and I are going to co-lead that together. It's going to be a Zoom study, and we would love to have you be a part of this, and we're actually going to watch the Netflix series, so I really hope that you will join in with that. It's going to happen on Monday evenings a couple of times a month, and so we hope you'll check it out. Thank you for choosing to be a part of West, and we are excited to get this new year started with you.
This is about understanding people to the core. Figuring out what you said and what they heard and eliminating this gray area in between. By you understanding your authentic wiring, you'll become the very best version of yourself. What we will be learning about is temperaments, which is the why behind your personality. All of your relationships, every decision you make, and every word you speak. This is going to be a fun journey.
Have you ever been hangry? Not hungry, but hangry. So sometimes, every Tuesday we typically have staff meeting, and we start with a spiritual formation piece or leadership learning, and we do that for about an hour, and then we dive into whatever topics are coming up. And sometimes, and you'll understand why this happens later on, but staff meeting times, unfortunately, the start time is somewhat fluid because of my leadership, and it's totally not fair to the staff, and I apologize, and new year, new goals, right? So I'm going to try to be better, but sometimes we end up starting later because my morning gets chaotic, and it's all about me, right? So, which it isn't, but that is how I act sometimes. And so, it'll be 1:30, 2, and someone on staff will say, I'm hangry. And if we're going to dive into anything else that we're going to work on, I need food. I'm hangry. We get hungry for food, right? We need that to nourish our bodies. Believe it or not, we also have an innate need for words. And we need certain words to come into our lives. It's how we hear things. And guess what? We also have this certain way that we are wired, and that determines how we communicate things, how we speak things, the words that we choose to use. Believe it or not, it is innate. So what we're going to do for the next 6 weeks is we are going to dive into communication and our words and how we learn why we say what we say, and then how we learn how our words come across to other people, and then what are our strengths and our weaknesses with our communication, and how can we work to overcome our weaknesses and how to capitalize on our strengths. And I promise you, I really do, if you will go through this next 6 weeks with us and do the things that we are going to encourage you to do, and read some of the follow-up meditations that we publish, this will be a game changer for you in your relationships. Kathleen Edelman, the lady who wrote this study, she is a brilliant psychologist, and North Point Community Church picked up on her study and then ran with it, and it just was a game changer for their staff. And North Point's Andy Stanley, if you've ever heard of Charles Stanley, Andy Stanley is his son. He is a phenomenal, gifted preacher and leader in the Protestant faith, and he talked about how this just changed their whole staff culture. So this message series that we are getting ready to do, it will impact you. You will become your best version of yourself because you will learn why it is that you do and communicate the way that you do. You'll learn what you need, and you'll be able to better articulate to others what you need. You'll learn it will impact your work setting, your family settings, your friendships, your emotional, intimate relationships. It will be a game changer for everything. Now, if we are going to be a people of love, following Jesus Christ, then we are called to love one another. So this is not just some kind of self-help study that we thought would be interesting. We are actually called to be mindful about the words that we say. So I want you to take a look at the foundational scripture that is going to drive this entire study. It is written by the Apostle Paul to one of the churches that he founded. It is in Ephesus, and it is a verse from Ephesians 4:29. Take a look. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So let's look at that one more time before we take it off the screen. Don't let any unwholesome talk. Now, this is not talking about using four-letter words or that kind of stuff. It is talking about the words that we use with other people. Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up. And here is a critical key phrase: according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. In preparation for this study, I came across this statement, and I think it is just so powerful. Every word that we say does one of two things. Every word, every single word that we say either helps or hurts. That's pretty heavy, but also very true. And in our relationships, it is not just about what we say. Communication, you've heard the phrase communication is a two-way street. It isn't just about what we say, it's also about how it is heard. Have you ever been in a situation where you say something and then the person that you're communicating with, they respond maybe negatively to what you said, and you're like, why are you mad at me about this? This is what I said. And they're like, no, that's not what you said. This is what you said. And so in like Psychology 101, they teach you to say, what I'm hearing is. So I always know that I'm entering into some dangerous, uncharted waters if the person that I'm talking to says, what I'm hearing you say is, because what that means is what you think you're saying to me right now is not how you are coming across at all, and I need you to pause and back up. One of the things I want us to think about as we go through these next weeks together is, what if we learn to modify our mouths? What if we learn to change the way that we communicate in certain situations and with certain people so that what we say, we don't want to necessarily change the meaning of what we say, but the how it is said. So this whole study that Edelman did is based off of temperaments. And I want us to learn the difference between personality and temperament. So take a look on your screen. A personality, our personality, is how we display our thoughts and our feelings. It's the how. And it evolves over time, and years and experiences change us. This is tied to emotional intelligence. Our personalities grow and hopefully become more tolerant and more wise as we age and experience different circumstances in life. It's the how we do things. And at West, over the past years, if you've been a part of West for a while, about 5 or 6 years ago, we did a personality inventory based off the Myers-Briggs. That's a personality test. And we did colors, and you were either blue, gold, green, or orange. So what we're doing today and what we're going to do in the weeks ahead, it is totally different from the Myers-Briggs or the color inventory or any of those things. What we are going to dive into is studying our temperaments. And here is what a temperament is. It is our innate wiring from God. It is what we are naturally disposed to. Believe it or not, we don't choose who we are, and we cannot change how we are wired. Now, what we can do, however, is change the how we come across. That's personality, the how. Changing how we are wired and what makes us tick. We all are created in the image of God, and we are wired a certain way. And it's fascinating and interesting and impactful to learn about how we are wired. So one of the things that I hope you're going to do with us is after today's message, and I'm going to try to cut it short, so that you can go and take it's a temperament inventory, and you'll take it. It'll take maybe 15 minutes, and it's a series of, I believe, 40 questions, and it will identify which temperament you are. They're divided into colors. And so, because this is dated actually thousands of years back to the time of Hippocrates and Plato and Aristotle. I mean, this stuff that we're talking about today is not new at all. And there are lots of fancy words that we're going to identify in just a second that describe these colors and these temperaments. But to make it easier for us, we're going to use Edelman's colors that she talks about with each of the temperaments. But our temperaments are divided into 4 different colors. We have yellow, we have red, we have green, and we have blue. And the 4 different colors are actually divided into extroverts and introverts. The top 2 colors that you see, yellow and red, they are extroverts. The bottom 2, green and blue, those are introverts. And Edelman encourages us to process and understand the words extrovert and introvert differently. So extroverts, we think about extroverts just like to be around people and all that kind of stuff. Well, it is tied to our temperament, and extroverted temperaments process things outwardly, like they like to talk about things. They have to process it verbally. Introverts, they take their thoughts and their feelings and they bring them inward. They process them inwardly alone. They don't need to talk about it. We can call it just a purging of the mouth sometimes when extroverts start talking. So yellow and red, they are extroverted. Green and blue are introverted. But another thing to remember about these colors is the 4 different temperaments are driven by either being people-driven, like that's what motivates you and makes you tick, or task-driven. You're driven by task, and that's the primary importance. And sometimes people, will become a task, but the blue and the red temperaments, those are driven by task, and the yellow and the green, they are driven by people. So at the end of the message today, I want you to take this quiz and see what temperament you are. And then over the next several weeks, we're going to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of the various temperaments, and how do we capitalize on our strengths, and how do we learn to modify our weaknesses. We were joking around as a staff before this started. And at the end of the series, we're going to have like a panel with our full-time and worship production staff, and we're going to, because we cover all the areas of the spectrum. And so at first we didn't think anybody showed up in the red, and then I'm like, oh, that's my second predominant color. And then we read the descriptors of that, and I'm like, yep. And nobody disagreed with what the red was. So as you take the quiz, I really encourage you. So there's no money tied to this, right? Like, you're not trying to get a raise, and you're not trying to impress anyone. You don't even have to tell anyone your results if you don't want to. However, I do encourage you, if you can get the people that you are in close relationships with, whether it's a staff or your family or your friends, if you can get them to do that, it will help you understand each other, and it will make our relationships so much stronger, because we learn not only like what we do and why we do what we do, but we learn what those that we are in relationship with need. And then we can learn like where we are a stumbling block to our relationships. My best friend has given me permission to share our friendship story, and so I'm going to use that for just a second. Our temperaments are very different. Whereas we have some characteristics of one color, we are vastly different. When we started becoming friends, I thought she hated me. And, how do you start developing a new friendship, right? Like, I mean, that's complicated within itself, developing new relationships or friendships. And so I would communicate in what I thought was just a great way, right? Like, I mean, I do get paid to communicate, so I sort of pride myself on being okay at it. And it just felt like weird. And so finally, one day I said, look, if you don't want to be friends with me, it is totally okay. Like, I understand that. Like, can we just talk about it? And then, like, we don't have to do this dance together. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, I don't think you want to be my friend. I think I get on your nerves. And she's like, well, why would you even say that? That's so weird and makes no sense to me at all. And I'm like, well, because of A, B, C, and D, like when we talk, she's like, I don't talk that much. Like, I'm just not chatty. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. And she is not wired to be chatty. And I was taking that to mean that she didn't like me. It didn't have anything to do with the fact that she didn't like me. It had everything to do with the fact that I have enough words for 5,000 people in like any given minute. And she is just more reserved and more quiet. So I want us to take a look, and I want you to think about what you think you might be in the temperaments. But as you take the inventory, as you take the quiz, be really honest with yourself. Don't just choose words that you want to describe you, because then this is not going to be any good. In fact, I took this months ago, like last year sometime, when I was planning for this message series to start the year, and then I wanted to take it again just to make sure that my temperament didn't change, and sure enough, it didn't. It's the exact same that it was a year ago, but I couldn't decide between two of the words. One was driven, and the other was imaginative. Now, I have the opportunity and privilege to work with Lindsay and the AMP team in creating AMPed, and I think that's so much fun because I get to talk about like crazy stories and fun crafts and that kind of stuff. That's the part of my job that I love. Give me a budget, I'm like, oh, please. But I love doing the amped creative part. And so one of the words was imaginative, and I'm like, Yeah, that's me. That's my predominant characteristic. But the other word was driven. And I mean, we did launch a church from like nothing, and so I do own that I am driven. The staff will tell you I drive us, like the word around is excellence, but I always give grace, but I want us to present and pursue excellence, because what we do, I believe, has potential to make a change in the world, because we're doing it in the love of God and in following God. So yeah, I'm driven. I wanted to be more imaginative. I feared that I might have been more driven. So I thought, I'm going to ask an unbiased party. And Lindsay and I were texting about some other work things. And I said, hey, I'm taking the color test for the series that starts Sunday. And I need you just to be honest with me. One of the things I love about our staff team is we are honest with each other. We tell each other the good, and we do tell each other the areas of growth and opportunity. So I knew Lindsay would tell me the truth. I said, which of these words describes me more, driven or imaginative? And she wrote back and she's like, well, you certainly are imaginative. But I think if we're honest, driven would be the one that describes you the most. And so I checked driven. As you take this inventory, look, every one of these temperaments have positive attributes, and every one of them also have, things that make us tick and make us be wired the way that we are, that aren't going to come across as like, oh yeah, I'm so proud of that for me. But you know what? We all are innately and beautifully and intricately made in the image of God. So we've all got great stuff that makes us up, and some stuff that we could work on. So when you take the inventory, really take it seriously and just be honest, not what you want to be, but what you really are. So there are 4 different categories, and I hope I do not massacre these words. Sanguine, that is the first one. That is yellow, and that is, and we'll dive into more of what these mean in just a second. The second one is choleric. These are the 2 extroverted temperaments. The bottom 2, phlegmatic and melancholic. Those are the ones that are more introverted and driven within. But for our purposes, we're not going to use all these fancy words. We're just going to use yellow, red, green, and blue. Now here's what they mean. Yellow, the color yellow, speaks the language of people and fun. So I noticed just now when I was talking to you about amped and telling you the story about Lindsay, one of the words that I used when I was describing it was fun. I love that part of my job because it's fun. My color is yellow. I am driven by people and fun. I like to have fun. If it isn't fun, odds are I don't want to do it, and then I have to make myself do it. So I am yellow. The second color is red. Red speaks the language of power and control. And that's not a bad thing. These are people that get stuff done and get it done really well. And so that's the second color. The third color, green, is the words, it speaks the language of calm and harmony. People that are green, they like for their worlds to be calm and harmonious. And then the fourth one is perfection and order. The personality, the temperament, the temperament is driven, and the words that come out of a blue person's mouth have to do with having order in their life. Now, I want to leave this up here for just a second, and you take a look at all the different words that are up there. When you look at the top 2, the yellow and the red, these are folks that, again, process things outwardly. They are pretty big communicators. We would call them chatty. So those are folks that talk a lot. And then on the bottom, you have folks that process things inwardly. They tend to get things in their head, and they stay in their head a lot. And they're not spontaneous in speech. They are intentional about the words that they use. If you're in a relationship with someone that is green or blue, when they speak to you, you know that they mean what they say. And they're not just, spitting off at the mouth and, trying to throw lots of different things out there and then figure out what it is that they really think. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, the power and control color and the perfection and order color, those two temperament types, those are driven by task. They like to get things done. Tasks are important, and tasks come first. On the left-hand side of the screen, the yellow and the green, those temperaments are driven by people. So if there's an opportunity to do something with people or focus on a task, they're going to err on people every time. And so it's interesting as you take this inventory and after you get your results to think about your predominant color and then your secondary color. And tomorrow we're going to send out an meditation, and we're going to give you just some other things to think about, like what if you are tied all three colors, like 3 of 4 colors, you have like scores that are almost exactly the same. Well, something happens with that. It's called masking, and it means that you have learned over the course of your life to mask that third temperament, pretty much based on probably the parental influence that you were raised under. And so that third temperament comes out because of your birth to now life experiences, and it makes you mask the other 2 temperaments that you have in that way. And so like, what if one color is predominant, like a score of over 20? Well, I loved the words that Edelman used, and I had to look up this because I have none of one color and 27 of another color. And so it said if you are a predominant color, then that is your predominant temperament, and that pretty much drives everything for you. And you have a great opportunity before you to learn what the other temperaments need and how to better communicate. So over the next 6 weeks, hopefully, I will change, and the staff will be like, oh, wow, a transformation of Andrea. So like, if you know me, then you know that yellow is my predominant temperament, and I love people, I love doing things with people, and I love fun. And if it involves order or perfection, yeah, I'm not your girl, because I struggle like to finish things and to make it all nice and orderly. It just doesn't matter to me that I'm preaching amidst, lots of electrical cords, wound up in little piles on the floor. And whereas this environment would drive some people insane, I'm like, I just need a little circle to preach in. This does not bother me at all. It bothers the rest of the staff, not me. So like in my personality or temperament inventory, I had like 27 yellow, 0 blue, 0. Like there was no blue. Only 4 calm and harmony. So apparently I am not a calm person, which that doesn't surprise us either. And I don't really care about harmony apparently. And my second predominant color was power and control. And Brad, we love each other. We have a great working relationship. I said, it says right here, can be bossy and likes to be in charge and will say what they think. He's like, yeah, that's you. That's you in a nutshell. And I'm like, yes, it is. And so the interesting thing just about our staff dynamics is, so I'm yellow, red. Dawn is people tied with people, fun, and perfection and order. And I don't know if she just tries to offset me. So she leans heavy into the perfection and order and keeps me in in order. And Lindsay is like tied between calm and harmony and perfection and order. Josh is perfection and order, calm and harmony. All the staff, except for Dawn, like in the little people fun, the rest of the staff, they're like all blue-green. So I just want to say a hats off to you for putting up with me, because apparently my temperament drives you all insane. But truthfully, so like over the years, I have had to learn to tame my tongue. I'll never forget, and if you've been in part of West for a while, you may have heard this story before, but like 24 years ago is when I began my ministry career. I was so green. I taught school for 3 years. I was an administrative position in Ashe County Schools for 1 year, and then I dove into ministry. And according to my temperament, I started to say, I don't know why I am this way, but I am, because my secondary temperament is power and control. I am not afraid to say difficult things. I don't like it, and apparently since I don't care about harmony, I'm willing to engage in conflictual conversations if it is going to benefit the mission that we are working on. So 24 years ago, so green and new in ministry, and I really felt like we were all working toward this common goal to give birth to a children's ministry. The church that I began ministry in, I think they had like 7 kids when I started, and they hired me to be the director of Christian education. And I think they had 4 youth and 10 people in the choir, and so my job was to do director of Christian education and music. We were sitting in a planning retreat, and we were talking about ways to be intentional about our children's ministry. And Vacation Bible School back then, and especially in that area, was a huge deal. And so we were working on that. There was someone in the room that had led Bible school for years, and they had done it the same way over and over and over again. And those are like lethal words in a church. We've never done it that way before. And when you say that, it means, and I am opposed to trying anything new. And if you say that in any organization, actually, but especially the life of the church, we've never done it that way before, and basically, we're not going to try anything new, you will give death to that organization faster than pretty much anything else that isn't illegal. So we're sitting in this room, and the lady says, well, there were lots of new people around the table, and they were giving ideas, and every time they would give an idea, she would say, well, we've never done it that way before. Well, we've never done it that way before. And finally, I'd had enough. And so at the end of the meeting, I said, it doesn't matter that we've never done it that way before. What do you care more about? Your agenda and your desires, or the work of reaching children in our community? And a hush fell across the room. Now, this was 24 years ago, 25 years ago, so I was like 25, 26 years old, and not at my best personality self, so I lacked some massive emotional intelligence. I also didn't understand my temperament, and that my words, whereas they were true, did not need to be said that way, and they certainly were not heard with the mission and the passion that I had. I mean, I didn't mean anything negative about the lady. What I meant was, we need to think more broadly so that this church and this community can reach more people with the love of Christ. But that's not what she heard. She heard me judging her. She heard me telling her, your ideas stink and you don't need to be in charge. After the meeting, the senior pastor was sitting across the room from me, and I said, well, how do you think that went? You know, because I was all proud of myself, right, for saying what everybody was thinking, or the newer people were thinking. And he's like, Andrea, I just don't think that was probably one of your stellar moments tonight. And he said, I know you didn't mean to come across the way that you did, but I think you hurt her. Now, I am clueless sometimes and brazen with my tongue, But one of the things that I don't want to do at all ever is hurt people with my words. And it devastated me that I had been so brass and so just saying it and my agenda. It hurt me that I hurt her. So I drove to her house that night, and I didn't tell her I was coming. And I sat in her living room and I apologized to her. And I told her that clearly I had a lot to learn about being in ministry, and that one of the things that I did not want to do was belittle her with my words. And so then the next thing I did was write the whole committee and say, I want you to know that I'm sorry for the way that I treated so-and-so in the meeting. And I think we all have great opportunities before us, but I am not here to say that my way is the only way. That began 24 years of learning about the power of words and the power of my tongue. Luckily, she was full of grace and forgiveness. So that's the other thing that I would encourage us to do as we go through these next 6 weeks. As we love each other, as we are in relationship together, we are not always going to get it right. We act out of trying to be our best selves, but guess what? There are so many other factors at play, and when we are stressed and when we have life stuff happening, it is difficult to always remember to, say things kindly, to think about what the other person is hearing. And so in those moments when we do mess up, there is absolutely nothing wrong with learning to say, I am sorry. I did not mean it to come across that way. Will you forgive me? And part of being in a relationship with someone else is forgiving, and then also forgetting and not bringing it up, 2, 3, 6 months later. Do you remember when you said this to me? Nothing good comes out of that. The power of communication and the power of words, it builds us up or it tears us down. As a people of love, whether you buy the whole Jesus thing or not, as people of love and kindness, we can all be better communicators so that no unwholesome talk will come out of our mouths, but all of our words can be used to build each other up based on their needs. Paul had that figured out, and I really look forward to figuring it out with you too. Will you pray with me? Gracious God, will you help us be mindful of our words and how we think about them and how we say them, how they come across to other people? God, use us so that we can communicate in ways of love and acceptance. We in our society right now need relationships more than ever. They are pivotal, and we can use the tools that we've been given to make other people's lives better. Help us learn to communicate better. Use us to be voices of hope and promise in a world that is very much in need of that. And thank you for giving us wisdom and intelligence so that we can look deep within and know that we are beautifully and intricately made in your image. And so we have so much potential to make a difference in this world. Thank you for being our God. And thank you for loving us so much and forgiving us of the times that we fall short of being the people that you call us to be. Use us for the work of your kingdom. Amen. So we want to celebrate that we have 225 YouTube subscribers. So thank you for subscribing to our YouTube channel like we asked. And also we want to celebrate we have 56 kids that have signed up for our Amped boxes. And that's just been amazing. So thank you to the Amped team that works so diligently, and Lexi, who works remotely with us to make Amped happen each week. We want you to stay tuned. Even if you're not not a kid, I think you'll enjoy Amped. And so I invite you to stay tuned for that. A couple of things I want to share with you too. Gary Heck, the gentleman that you heard singing, that you hear sing every week, he's amazing and such a gift to West. His dad died about a week ago, and so we want to remember Gary and Suzanne and Brody and Logan and Sabrina and all of their family in our prayers, all of Gary's brothers and sisters, as they grieve the death of their dad. So please keep that in your prayers. Also, we want to celebrate that Josh Doom, our drummer that you see in the video and saw if you were at the parking lot Christmas Eve service, he is a new daddy. And so we celebrate that with Josh. So we just wanted to lift those folks up in prayer. The way that we communicate is so important, not just about being heard, but about hearing, and hearing what those that we are in relationship with need. So I invite you, after Amped, we're going to send out the link for the person or the temperament inventory. I would love to know, as your pastor, what your temperament is. So after you take it, if you'll shoot me an email at Andrea@headingwest.org, I'd love to know what your temperament is. So as we go through the next several weeks, I will not talk about you online, I promise. The staff have given me permission to talk about them. And so I won't need to talk about you. But I would just love to know who you are and what your temperament is. And may you just go in the beauty of creating a new year, and new memories and new beginnings as we continue to go through this COVID time. So go in peace and watch Amped.